Well, you may ask other people, religion means nothing to me. I mean, I have no interest in religion. I mean, I don't care about religion. Obviously, it's important to the other people, but certainly when it comes to how I see things or I interpret things, religion plays absolutely no part in how I see the world, and how I interpret the world, and how I analyse the world.
Più di 3.600 morti, 30.000 feriti, 30 anni di conflitto. Questi sono stati in cifre i Troubles, il lungo conflitto civile che ha sconvolto l'Irlanda del Nord, un territorio di 14.000 km² che ha in Belfast la sua capitale e che ha la particolarità di essere un territorio britannico sull'isola irlandese, unico confine di terra tra i due stati dell'arcipelago. Questo status particolare ha determinato per l'Irlanda del Nord la radice delle sue disgrazie. Sotto quale governo stare? Siamo irlandesi o siamo britannici? Si chiedono i suoi abitanti. Per dare una risposta a queste domande e per capire i motivi di una violenza così lunga, l'estate scorsa abbiamo intrapreso un viaggio tra Belfast, Derry e Dublino, incontrando persone dalle esperienze e dalle storie più diverse. Un viaggio tra muri fisici e mentali che separano famiglie, strade, città, regioni. Un viaggio sul confine.
Internationally, Britain has fed the line that the conflict here in the north was a sectarian war, that Catholics were killing Protestants and Protestants were killing Catholics, ignoring Britain's own role in the conflict in our history and the negative impact that Britain has had in Ireland for 800 years. This struggle and the conflict here has its roots, as I say, in hundreds of years of history, and isn't just a simplistic, narrow view that one day Catholics woke up and decided to kill Protestants and Protestants woke up and decided to kill Catholics. It's just a total misrepresentation of the conflict. We like to focus on the fact that no matter what religion the planters were, it was still a colonial process.
The real nature of the conflict is about national self-determination. It's about land, it's about sovereignty. I think in the past it was much more about religion. I think certainly in the past number of decades it became much less about religion, and there are many factors for that, but certainly at the forefront it's about competing identities, and it's about competing nationality. So of course you have people who want to remain part of the United Kingdom, and you have people who want to become part of a unified Ireland, as they call it.
Già dal XII secolo gli anglo-normanni avevano avviato la conquista dell'isola, ma fino al 1600 il controllo degli inglesi fu tutt'altro che saldo. Agli inizi del XVII secolo la corona inglese iniziò un processo di colonizzazione delle contee irlandesi dell'Ulster. Dopo la recente vittoria nella guerra dei 9 anni, durata dal 1594 al 1603, gli inglesi erano infatti padroni dell'intera isola. La colonizzazione rispondeva alla necessità dei sovrani di controllare i riottosi territori del nord dell'Irlanda e fu portata avanti a scapito della popolazione locale. Nel corso dei secoli le contee dell'Ulster videro radicalizzarsi sempre di più il conflitto tra britannici e irlandesi e il cristallizzarsi di due identità in contrapposizione.
And my identity is much more than the union and the constitutional question, although that is an important part of who I am as well. I value Northern Ireland being part of the United Kingdom. I value my British identity. I'm very proud of that, and I want to protect and promote that. And I think most people have a sense of Britishness or Irishness, or even both. But of course there are those who that isn't part of their identity, and they're neutral on that question, and that's absolutely fine. And you're seeing more and more people now who identify as Northern Irish. Northern Ireland's their home. It's slightly different, and it's not as binary, I suppose, as being British or Irish. Just being Northern Irish and wanting to live here and share here, and you know, this is their identity. This is where they come from. This is who they are. So I think it's a minority of people, in answer to your question, who would be totally neutral in terms of their identity and the constitutional question, but it does happen.
I tend to say I'm Northern Irish because saying that I'm British is technically correct, but I don't have any great love for what I consider British culture. But saying that I'm Irish often feels wrong too, because I feel like that has a very specific cultural connotation. Whereas here, if you say you're Irish, it's like saying I'm not British. So I tend to find that it's easier just to tell people I'm Northern Irish, because what I really mean is that I'm from here, and I feel like I'm part of a cultural group that's formed of people who say that they're from Northern Ireland, that they don't have a strong affiliation with either the nationalists or the unionist community. They aren't particularly motivated by those values. So I tend to say that I'm neutral Northern Irish.
Una divisione profonda e netta separa questo angolo dell'isola, gli unionisti protestanti da un lato e i nazionalisti cattolici dall'altro. Le vie di mezzo non sono accettate e la cartina tornasole per definire l'appartenenza di una persona è la cosiddetta domanda costituzionale. L'Irlanda del Nord fa parte del Regno Unito? Oppure deve riunificarsi alla Repubblica d'Irlanda, da cui è stata separata a seguito della sua indipendenza nel 1919? È una vicenda, quella tra le due comunità, che affonda le radici nella storia, dai primi coloni della Gran Bretagna fino ai tristemente noti Troubles. Dal 1968 al 1998 il conflitto nordirlandese ha visto contrapporsi gli unionisti protestanti e i nazionalisti cattolici. I primi volevano che l'Irlanda del Nord restasse parte del Regno Unito, i secondi invece volevano che le 6 contee diventassero parte della Repubblica d'Irlanda. Il conflitto terminò con la firma del Good Friday Agreement, ovvero l'accordo del Venerdì Santo, firmato nel 1998 tra il governo del Regno Unito e quello della Repubblica d'Irlanda.
Well, if you start from the fundamental point that Britain colonised Ireland, that partition was imposed in Ireland to suit the British, and if you accept it, therefore, that was an injustice. So if you do nothing about that injustice, you're accepting an injustice. And as I say, in that respect, I don't think you can be neutral. You know, for example, when somebody was, say, for example, in South Africa, saying that they were neutral in respect of apartheid, it meant they were doing nothing about apartheid. So if you do nothing about apartheid, you're actually reinforcing apartheid. So it's the same here. You know, if you say you're neutral, you're not making a decision about what the fundamental political issues are. Yeah. And therefore, from that point of view, you're reinforcing partition.
I think it's possible to be neutral in this situation, and I say that as someone who is from one of my parents from a unionist background, the other is from a nationalist background. I myself wasn't baptised, went to a Protestant school and a Catholic grammar school. I'm someone who I feel genuinely quite neutral in that sense. Like I wasn't really brought up in one or the other community. But I think that there's an emerging middle class, young, new generation of people who are neutral, and I think in their day-to-day lives they would be neutral, like in terms of they don't discuss that cultural issue. They have other things which make up their identity, as opposed to relying on these cultural, ethnicity, like tropes, basically. Like there's a huge amount of people for whom that is just not an issue. And I think there are a lot of people who would consider them not neutral, because if you push them for an answer on the constitutional question, as we call it, they would give an answer one way or the other. But because that question doesn't come up, and because we've tried to cultivate an environment where you don't ask that question, originally out of necessity and now out of almost convention, I do believe it's possible to be neutral. I think along with that neutrality, you can have a pragmatic interest in the constitutional status one way or the other, but I think that's independent from having a cultural attachment to it. I think it's possible to have a dispassionate view on the constitutional question without making that part of your identity. And I think that the new generation, if they have access to social mobility, is quite likely to be in that group. Like, I think that's going to be an expanding group that we see in the next, 10, 20 years.